Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast, the show where we review oddball movies, have oddball discussions, and occasionally take questions from you, the oddball fans.
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg.
Today we actually have a special guest that's hanging out on the call named Ellie Ann. You've heard her on the podcast before with various books. She's a New York Times bestseller. She does a whole lot of work in publishing, in editing, in comics. Right now, she has an awesome Kickstarter out there right now. It's called Caster's Easy Readers. The tagline is See Jane Fly, See Dick, Time Travel. Caster introduces 3 exciting, diverse, easy readers set in beautiful fantasy worlds. And this is something I'm excited about because I'm an uncle now and I'm trying to find awesome books for my niece. And she's a little bit young for this one, but she's going to be needing them soon. So, Ellie, first off, say hi, and can you tell us a little bit more about the Kickstarter?
Hey guys, it is awesome to be here. As always, a total highlight to be able to get on the show. I love you guys and I love all your listeners. I've made some really good friends through the podcast, actually. Like you said, the tagline for it is See Jane Fly, See Dick, Time Travel. And whenever I was trying to run an ad for it, it wouldn't let me because it said Dick in the ad.
You can't just run any Dick and Jane time travel ad.
Yeah, but they're afraid that I was talking about a different kind of dick.
I'm sure there's an advertising agency that handles it. I mean, I've seen them. I've gone to torrent sites before.
I know.
Man, you guys should listen to My Brother and Me. They have like a recurring sponsor of like this sex site that just like sells sex equipment, and they totally talk them up every time they sponsor them. They're like, oh man, you guys should go and check out all the sex toys you could buy.
That was like the first 200 episodes of Joe Rogan's podcast where he had to come up with like 5 minutes to talk about the Fleshlight. Oh, those started to get weird.
You got to advertise somewhere. Facebook don't do it, so Joe Rogan lets you. Well, today we're talking about, I forgot the name of the movie all of a sudden, Tony. What is
The
it?
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Nightmare Before Christmas, yes. Which is...
I'm really glad that you prepared and know the name of the movie and everything.
I think in our 3rd episode, Joe was telling us that we talked for about 45 minutes about a movie and never once mentioned the name, so it's not entirely unprecedented. Nightmare
Before Christmas is a film that is popularly credited to Tim Burton. He actually didn't direct. He did produce it, and it is about the place called Halloween Town. In this setup of this universe, all of the different major holidays have their own sort of world, and Jack is from Halloween Town, and his problem is that he's just so darn good at his job that it's gotten boring for him, and so he wants to go and find something else to do, some new world to conquer, and he happens across Christmas Town and falls in love with it, as we all do, because it's obviously better than Halloween, and tries to bring his own Halloween Town version of Christmas to the world. How did I do describing this movie, Tony?
It's a pretty bare bones thing. I would bet that 95% of the people that have listened to us have seen this, but like it is one of the classic ones, and I would very much disagree with Christmas being better than Halloween, but I've had a lot better experiences on Halloween than just like boring Christmas. But yeah.
I've had some great experience. I like your bare bones pun. That was good. Zing. You need to, somebody needs to get a rim shot going on there.
Halloween is way better than Christmas because costumes and candy. And
yeah, only the dad gets to do the costume thing.
You don't have to see extended family either. So
well, that I guess I could buy into. That's both a blessing and a curse, going over to people's houses. That's Halloween. I'm sorry, not Halloween. Thanksgiving and Christmas. We're like, all right, who are we? Are we gonna go over to people's houses this time around? We just saw them on Thanksgiving. Like, should we go to this person's a day ahead? And Ashley has her parents are split, so that adds an extra person to go see. It's a chore. But it's also good to have these things that like force us to reconnect with people. I think sometimes it's good to get back on.
See, my family was just all like, "No, we're good. Like, we know you guys are having a party out in Oklahoma, but we're gonna stay here. It'll be the 4 of us." I think the most that have ever been at one of our Thanksgiving was 8. I experienced 50 people at a Thanksgiving once, and that was just too much chaos. That was at my ex's house, and it was just too insane.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. You want like 20 max.
My life. And then also there's like the added bonus of Halloween of, connecting in the woods with all of your friends and performing satanic rituals. So there's that too.
Jack is the not Lord of Light. What is a demon of light?
Yeah, Demon of Light.
Very
which is a
on the
weird title.
nose. Like, in case you were wondering, yes, he basically is Lucifer.
Yeah.
In one of his song lyrics. Would you guys say that we're in this whole debate? So here's a question: is Nightmare Before Christmas a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie?
It's always been kind of like ambiguous with that because they're celebrating it on the same day, so they technically are like, it's December 25th. Jack is taking over and he's doing his thing. But it's so much more themed towards Halloween than it is towards Christmas. Like, it still looks like Halloween with everything else that's going on.
It's very much like, I mean, Halloween Town. I will get into some of my problems with the film in a little while. However, the design of Halloween Town and the depth of, you know, all of these characters as far as like how they're just physically put together is so fascinating and so well done. And I mean, and not just that, but the animation. Like, Jack is kind of like, he's an interesting enough looking guy, you know, he's just sort of like a really thin dude with the kind of a skull face. Maybe it's sort of a cross between a skull face and like a smiley emoji, right? But
a little bit.
But then you, like, when you see him move, like, sometimes he moves like a normal person and sometimes he's like a spider.
Yeah, like in that last fight with Oogie Boogie, he's like moving under the blades like a spider.
Oh, he reminds me of like a spider Fred Astaire, actually. He reminds me
If I
of
had
Fred
seen
Astaire.
more Fred Astaire stuff, I would be more appreciating of the reference. I didn't go that far.
You know, like dancing and singing, but then also he's just that debonair. He has that suit and everything. He totally looks like Fred Astaire as a spider.
Do you think that they're singing in universe? Do you think that, like, in Halloween Town they just love music a lot and like it's not technically a musical, this is just their world?
Oh, I think the first song is definitely like a town-wide presentation that they're supposed to do. But like whenever you've got Jack's Lament going on where he's like walking through the graveyard and doing his thing on his own, is that like supposed to represent his thoughts or is he actually singing? That's the question here, right?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's that's sort of an eternal question with musicals, and generally you kind of just hand wave it. But here we're talking about a legit fantasy world that, you know, has people in it that can do things that aren't possible. So why couldn't they also be able to sing in addition to being made of bugs and like taking their heads off and stuff just at a drop of a hat?
It seemed like the singing was pretty literal to me. And I'm wondering how many people are wondering why I like this movie so much, despite it possibly being more song than dialogue with my track record of musicals. A lot of animations get a pass from me.
Okay, that's why you like it, because it's
Like
animated.
I was telling Al that yesterday, like, this movie and a lot of animated movies, especially like Disney stuff, get a pass from me because I don't have to see the actor's stupid face while they're singing and doing their whole dance routines and everything and shaming their families. So it's just a little bit easier.
Face making stupid songs in a stupid scene.
Yeah.
So it's a cringe thing for you? Is that why you don't like musicals? Because you imagine yourself in that circumstance?
Yeah, that's the biggest problem for me with musicals, that every time people are doing that, I'm just cringing and cringing and cringing, and somehow it just fits better with animation.
God. Next time I'm hanging out with you, I'm totally going to break into song and stare deeply into your eyes.
I hang out with Tony all the time and break into song, and it still hasn't worked. So
it definitely, like, how many times have you done that on the dirt block, and I respond with...
But I like it. See, that's the thing. That's the difference between you and me, is when I see people break out into song, I'm like, oh man, I want to do that. I want to break out into a cool song. And then I'll sing it with them.
I am a lot more likely to break into song than I used to be. I'll do it on the dirt block occasionally, especially with like Johnny Cash songs.
Go watch the dirt block, people.
Oh my God, are you turning into a romantic?
Johnny Cash songs are not necessarily romantic.
Johnny Cash isn't romantic. Singing is romantic.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was Walk the Line was a pretty romantic movie as far as seeing people like build up love like that and everything. And there's also a lot of terrible things that happen in that movie. But like I would almost consider Walk the Line to be the best romance movie ever made.
Well, the music was one of my favorite parts of Nightmare Before Christmas. It like totally hooked me.
You know, that's a weird thing. I didn't have any problem with any of the music, but there was nothing, like, I can kind of sing This Is Halloween, This Is Halloween a little bit. I mean, I could just sing that part.
Did you like the duet scene? That was awesome.
Which
I
duet?
love that scene. Like the piano.
With who though? The duet with who?
What's her name?
Sally?
Yeah.
The one girl in the entire world that Jack rules, that is the king over, that he allowed the
Hey,
one
there are
female.
witches and other things.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they're not very.
No.
Let's say they're not very feminine. They're like monstrous type
Hey,
females.
she has a lot of agency. She was literally created by a robot to probably do some pretty nefarious things.
Yeah,
to her.
there's a definite subtext there of her like being kind of
Yeah.
his little love robot that is going off and doing her own thing.
For sure.
But that's kind of one of the problems I have with the movie. Not necessarily that there's not enough women in it, although that is sort of an ancillary issue. But there's arguably a romance between her and Jack. But up
Yeah.
until the final scene of the movie, he barely acknowledges she exists. Like she's pining for him the whole time. He doesn't even know her. She doesn't really know anything about him except for that he's the king. And of course, it's good to be the king in this particular circumstance. But I don't think the story in this is a bad story necessarily, but it's super thin. It's super like really superficial, and the idea that they just get together at the end and they're supposed to, it's like, I don't hate it, but there's nothing, I never felt like, man, I'm really hoping they're going to get together. It just seemed like, it just seemed like the foregone conclusion that the movie had, that it's not exploring a lot. And especially as a movie that's kind of sort of synonymous with Tim Burton, right? This is maybe the thing that gets tied to his name the most. It doesn't really track for me as sort of checking off a lot of his tropes as far as the main characters and their personality and their struggle go.
In some ways, I can see that, but like you look at like I watched Sweeney Todd recently, and like it's sort of a similar situation. You're not exactly looking at a good guy; you're looking at a guy who's definitely out for his own motivations. But like, it hit a few of those marks. But the romance is always a little bit too easy in Tim Burton movies.
Well, that was my biggest problem with Frankenweenie, is like the guy and the girl. I mean, maybe not. I had a lot of problems with Frankenweenie, but there was the whole thing where like she's just pining after him, and he barely knows. It was essentially the same thing, and they get together at the end. It's like, we're gonna fight the monster, and I just, I did not. I was like, I don't. Why are you guys together now? What do you have in common?
The only time it wasn't easy was in Beetlejuice, when Winona Ryder wouldn't marry him because she was like 14 and he's like 150 years old and dead.
I can't believe the things that will drive women away. I mean, come on. Give him a chance.
I mean, he just looks like a guy that, like, you wake up in the morning, he's got the best breath, you know?
Gross. Yeah.
But he doesn't have that sort of...
It's about the world, though. I mean, to me, like, I've never, ever connected to probably any of Tim Burton's characters. It's about him creating this world that and that's why I watch the movies, and that's why I enjoyed this one. But as far as characters go, I mean, to me they aren't like really characters. They might have one goal, but it's just so plot and world driven that he basically leaves characters by the wayside. And to me, that isn't, too bad of a thing, because his world is so developed. I mean, it would have been better if he had developed characters, but I just love, like, how he immerses the viewers in the worlds. That's what it's about. It's like the ultimate fantasy.
And I do get that. I mean, the world is, especially in this movie, not necessarily in all of his movies, but in this one in particular,
Right.
It is really well developed, and you can get on board with the world. To me, even like the journey of Jack, right, is literally his conflict is, I'm too good at stuff. And it's kind of hard. It doesn't even feel like the Tim Burton thing that you're used to, right? Because Tim Burton sort of has the nobody understands me and nobody likes me and I'm shunned by all my peers and I mean, this is the king of Halloween Town. Like, the elected mayor can't even, like, figure out what to do if Jack's not around. Like, everybody looks up to him. He's the most popular guy anywhere in this town.
What was the mayor's line? It's like, I'm just a politician. I can't make decisions on my own.
Yeah, which I don't know if that was satire or just bad writing. Or I'm not, maybe not bad writing, but
I'm sure that was satire with the way he was whining.
Possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's satire, though, then they're just like saying, you know, it would be good. You know, it'd be really good if we got rid of all these politicians and had a monarchy. What up?
A monarchy based on pumpkins.
So I don't love this movie the way other people love it. I'm okay with the songs, but they're not like my favorite things ever. And, you know, I want more out of the characters. The world building is nice, but it doesn't dig deep enough for me to really hook me into the movie. The nicest thing, I mean, it doesn't overstay its welcome. That's the good thing. And the animation is incredible. You know, so an hour and 16 minutes, it gets in, it gets out. So even though it's not very deep, you know, it's sort of like, okay, but it wasn't very long either, so we can cut it a little slack. But I think there is a story you could have told that could have gone a little deeper, that could have explored some of these ideas. I mean, the fact that Jack doesn't interact with Sally, I think it's felt. If there was more sort of depth to their romance, then that could be, you know, a really great, give the ending a little bit more. If Jack had ever acknowledged the existence of Mr. Boogie Woogie before, like, the final showdown, that maybe that would have had a little more weight to it as well. It's just like,
well, he does. Wait. Like, he acknowledges it. Like, he tells the kids, and I don't want Oogie Boogie having anything to do with this. It's about the halfway point of the movie.
Okay.
So it is a little bit late to establish your other bad guy other than Jack.
Right.
It just feels like Jack kind of screws everything up, and then they're like, well, we gotta, like, from a story perspective, we have to have somebody be bad, because this is our protagonist. So he fights a guy who's made out of bugs. Okay, go. And again, there's no sort of, like, therefore statement in the script. It's just a bunch of and then, and nothing, like, builds upon itself. Which, again, Mr. Oogie Boogie is a really cool idea. I just, if he had a little bit more weight, if Jack, like, had some conflict with him, but as it comes across, Halloween Town is full of demons and monsters and witches and everything like that, and then they're saying, like, oh, but this one guy's bad.
Right.
It doesn't track for me from a logical standpoint. It's like, why is he the bad one? You guys are all skeletons, and, like, you talk about how great it was to scare little kids and everything. So what is he doing that's so wrong? I mean, other than eating people. But
like, besides eating people, like, the bad, like, inside of that culture would have been the one that, like, is black and white, not morally ambiguous, you know, or it is the one that, like, tries to fit in with, like, popular culture. That would have been the character who stood out and who everybody hated, not him. So that does make sense, that it was kind of, like, out of the world for him to be the bad guy.
I guess it would have worked more for me if, like, he was, like, a nice fairy somehow. Like, if he was not portrayed as another horrifying thing, but, like, you know, this really nice lady that goes around town, you know, and, like, helps everybody out, and she's the only one who doesn't like a monster, and then, like, turns out, oh, wait, she was the one who you need to be afraid of the whole time. At least then you'd have some sort of thematic meaning there. It's like, hey, it's not about what's on the outside, you know, it's what's inside and what you do and how you try.
So you're saying that this movie needed, like, a Todd character from, like, We Are the What We Do in the Shadows. It needed, like, a normal person to be the bad guy instead of all these horrific monsters.
Was Todd the bad guy in What We Do in the Shadows?
No, I'm just saying, like, to have that character where it's just, like, a normal person in that world where he just doesn't fit.
Yes, I would say that, and not, like, not, like, sticking out like a sore thumb, but definitely I think that there's some interesting thematic depths that could be mined there. And this movie doesn't really mine any thematic depths. It just sort of, like, scoops up whatever it finds along the surface and as it's running by.
Oh, like that. The creator of this movie, this was one of his earlier works. He ended up going to Leica after a little while. I'm pretty sure he was the director for Coraline, and that was a lot deeper.
Definitely was, yeah. It's cool to see the stuff that Leica's doing now, but at the same time, like, to know that the technology that they have access to, where they kind of sort of help out their animation with some CG and everything, and that's fine. I'm all for using the tools that you have at your disposal, but to look at The Nightmare Before Christmas and see that, oh wow, they just couldn't, like, they couldn't computer animate anything. There's even like hand-drawn cell animations when like things are burning and stuff, and they still got it to look that good, is really impressive.
It's like pre-3D printing and all that. I remember watching a show where they were just showing this guy making like every possible head for Jack out of clay and other things. Just so much work went into that, because now you can just animate like what the next vowel sound is going to be, tell the 3D printer to put it out, and you end up getting a movie like Paranorman.
Which is, again, that's fine too. Like, it's, what'd you say, Ellie?
Oh, that's what it was. What was that for me in this movie were the details, like, and like the funny details of like what the kids got for Christmas. You know, it's like things like that totally made me love the movie. It kind of reminded me of like a Ray Bradbury book, like Something Wicked This Way Comes, where it's not the plot, it's not necessarily even the characters that draw you into the story. It's like these like little tiny details that just like really hit you and make you remember it. You know, because like for all the things about this movie, like you will remember it, and that's because the world building. And then world building is all about details. That's why I like the details in this movie were so good. It's like, you know, anywhere you looked, you would have found something kind of cool about that world.
I wanted the duck, like that duck with the crazy teeth on wheels. I wanted that thing when I was a kid.
I think my favorite detail was the guys who were always like the band that was always playing on the corner, and the stand-up bass or whatever had the thing living inside of it. I don't know what it was, but that like always kind of stuck with me as I was watching the movie. It was like, there's that guy inside the bass. He's neat.
And they do the most depressing jingle bells ever.
That was pretty great. There was a part of me though that wanted that bass to be like a creature in and of itself that could play itself. Like, if it had arms that were playing the bass as the guy was looking out from behind, like, that would have been even more rad. But
yeah, just like busted out of the sides of it.
Yeah, something almost like an old school, like Walt Disney cartoon. I could see something like that in, where you have like an anthropomorphic instrument that plays itself.
We always used to try to figure out how the people died to end up in Halloween Town, because some are more obvious than others, and we just make up lore for all these different characters. Like how the mayor had his like neck twisted around, and that's why he can go back and forth, and just so many weird things that we came up with back then.
So you think these are all ghosts?
I'm not 100% sure on that upon watching it again, but like that was kind of what we thought whenever I was younger. Like you got the guy walking around town with an axe in his forehead. You've got all these like kids that we always suspected the kids got poison candy or something like that, or any number of random stuff. We always thought that everyone was dead. It doesn't seem that way now, but it definitely seemed plausible back then, especially with everybody just pulling their heads off and doing all that.
Well, it's not real, so anything could be possible.
What?
That just
not real? Are you serious?
I do like that angle though. I like the angle that, especially with the kids, like that. And maybe because they're such brats, maybe like they had somebody just, Dennis the Menace, that got fed up with them, like, these kids, and like fed them some poison candy on Halloween. Maybe you have to die on Halloween to go to Halloween Town. Maybe that's how it works.
Yeah, that's it.
Just imagining an old grandpa that's like, they toileted my trees last year. They put all the paper and the eggs around. I'm getting them this year.
This could go so dark. I don't think I want to follow that train. I don't want to go down that tunnel. That's a bad tunnel to go down.
If he could open any other door and do this movie for another holiday, which one would you have wanted?
Man, what were the holidays that we saw?
I was like Thanksgiving, St. Patrick's Day. There were some that Easter, which they brought back the Easter Bunny, which I thought was pretty funny. There's a bunch of other ones, but I can't remember offhand.
I'm trying to think.
Columbus Day, Labor Day, all those.
I can see him trying to be Uncle Sam on 4th of July.
I bet Valentine's Day Town is really kinky.
Yeah, let's
Oh
just
my
change that door to
God.
Saturnalia's.
Wait, what is that reference?
Saturnalia?
Yeah, what's that?
It's either, I think it's a Roman holiday, because Roman was
Okay.
Saturn, Jupiter, all that stuff, right? And Greeks were the
Uh-huh.
ones before.
Yes.
It's basically, if I remember right, everybody has a giant party. There's orgies everywhere, and drink and wine and everything else, and that's Saturnalia.
That actually was by the way, that's a predecessor to Christmas. FYI.
One
I'm
of the
looking.
pagan holidays that went over Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think
Oh,
in general
okay.
people celebrated a lot during the solstice, or was it the solstice or the other thing?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that was what Saturnalia was. It was like December 21st or in that range on the winter solstice.
I'm looking to see. I don't see the sex thing mentioned here in Wikipedia, Tony.
Oh, I've read it many a times in other books.
Okay.
So maybe they're just adding the flavor to that, but I'm sure people got down. Anytime you're not at work, like there ends up being some screwing going on.
They didn't have television back then, so.
I mean, you get Bacchus involved and he's bringing the wine. It's just a good time.
It does say that Saturnalia license also permitted slaves to disrespect their masters without the threat of punishment.
What? That's insane. And I bet that's so not true. Masters are
Yeah.
like, what did he
Well,
say? I'm like, it's the holiday. They're like, I don't think so.
Or they
Well-
just wait till the next day to dole out the punishment.
The final
Exactly.
sentence of the paragraph says, everyone knew, however, that the leveling of the social hierarchy was temporary and had limits. No social norms were ultimately threatened because the holiday would end.
Do you remember in Brahms' Krampus story that they had that weird like party at the radio or at the bar where it just
Yeah.
turned into an orgy? That was them celebrating Saturnalia
Okay.
or a Yule thing. It was interesting. It's all the same on there. Maybe I'm just mixing holidays and want there to be more orgies around Christmas time.
Yeah, if anyone had gone through the Valentine's Day door, it probably wouldn't have been a kid's movie.
And him having no flesh, he is ill-equipped for that holiday anyway.
Ooh,
Well, yeah, he's made of bone.
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
a good
he could
point.
probably
He's,
get a
he's
boner.
he has no problem getting a boner.
Just grab a rib. That's almost biblical.
Totally biblical.
I think I don't have anything else to say about this movie. Did our viewers send us any questions about the movie in particular, Tony?
We did have one question. I'm pulling it up right now. It is from Jennifer Joseph, which I believe I met her at Denver Comic Con this year, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Yes,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
friend.
Yeah.
Huh? And she's
And
Oh,
she-
you know her too? Okay.
Yeah, she was at the table with Ellie.
I was
Like,
being sarcastic because I don't know. I guess you were asking Ellie that question. I'm
Yes, I was
sorry.
asking Ellie. And she's just asking, what's our favorite character and song from this movie?
Well, This Is Halloween is my favorite song because you can't get it out of your head. But I guess, well, I listened to the piano duet a lot, so that might be it. Yeah, it's probably the piano duet. And then Sally's my favorite, but maybe that's just because she's the only girl in the movie.
Yeah,
Sally's my
that's-
favorite as well, and it might be because I have a thing for redheads, but
I mean, from that perspective, I also do like Sally. And there's, man, going down the for adults road would lead to whole kind of interesting questions about her and Jack and what goes on when she can remove her limbs.
I know.
Nobody send us any links to fan fiction, please. We can imagine it in our heads.
you can send it to me. I'll just forward it to Al during a meeting.
Yes, I was gonna say everyone send it to Al.
I think my favorite is Mr. Oogie Boogie. I really
Yeah.
love, I mean, just for, like, I wish that he had more sort of setup and was a little bit less goofy, but that reveal at the end when they pull his sheet off and he's full of bugs, and that, like, the whole Legion idea, right, where, you know, he's just full of these things that are all living and squirming and, like, making up his being, like, that's kind of horrifying. I don't actually, like, I'm not scared of bugs, but I'm scared of a lot of bugs. And that guy just being a
Yeah.
whole bag of bugs, I think that's a really cool concept.
Him just falling apart like that.
Yes. Also, honorable mention to Santa Claus from Christmas Town, just kind of being a boss.
Yeah. They needed the one from Krampus there, just have wielding a greatsword. Would have made for an interesting
That
movie.
would be great. Him and Krampus team up. That was before anybody knew about Krampus, though, Tony. This is like the 90s.
Krampus looks more like he'd be part of Halloween Town. I always wondered why he didn't just bring Christmas to Halloween Town.
Mm-hmm.
How come all the cool things have started to get like washed out? Like what? There's not going to be any cool stuff left. You know, it used to be Krampus was kind of like an on the edge thing. Like, oh, you know, you've never heard of Krampus, right? Now they have like a major studio release movie about it, and everybody kind of like at least knows about it and talks about it, and sort of lost its. This is me being a giant hipster, but it feels like now that everybody knows about it, it's kind of lost the edge a little bit.
Right, because before only you knew about it, and then that made it cool.
Not only me.
Just go more retro. Start looking up like Babylonian gods and things.
Well, that's the question.
I was just gonna say, like, there's like so many fucked up characters that. Oops, I just said that word. That you'll always find something new, for sure.
That's what I wonder about.
They're starting to make them up now. Like you got Bagul from Sinister.
That is not a real thing. They made that up. That's what I'm saying. What if we run out of stuff? What if we run out of cool things? Like nobody's going into the.
That's totally a thing.
Bagul is not a real Babylonian god. They made him up. They're like, we need something that sounds kind of sort of like Boogeyman. We're gonna make. Hate it.
Baguli Man. I mean, the thing from Stranger Things was pretty cool.
Well, yes, but that again, we're talking about like actual historical stuff. Like, have we mined out all the cool stuff out of history?
No, we haven't. Like, there's been nothing about Baal or Asherah, who were really disgusting pagan gods.
Well, they don't have any like.
There hasn't been much on the Druids, which I mean, they're pretty rock and religion, but you could go dark with it too.
Yeah, you see a lot more of that in video games than you do in modern pictures.
On Druids?
Yeah, like you'll see Druids all over fantasy games, but I can't really think of any movies that have them. Like, you see flavors of them in Lord of the Rings, like sort of with the elves, but there's never like an outright Druid. Like, you've got the guy that can turn into a bear, and you might be able to consider him a Druid, especially because he uses like herbalism and healing and all that sort of stuff. But no one that's like outright called a Druid.
Oh, speaking of fantasy, I love you guys' Game of Thrones recaps. Love them. Because I just started the series, and so I'm like so into it right now.
Unfortunately, we don't go all the way back to the beginning. We did like season 5 and season 6, right, Tony?
Yeah, and season 5 might be lost to the world. Like I think that got lost whenever we ended like the recap channel and started putting it on our own.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I actually might have them downloaded somewhere. I'm just not sure if we're gonna re-release them.
They're really good. I like it.
We actually have someone binging them right now, and every time they finish one, they're like, "You're wrong about this. You're wrong about this, and you're especially wrong about this." But I still like this.
Being right is not one of our skills.
No, definitely not. Especially whenever we're going into the Game of Thrones recaps right afterwards, and we don't have time to let anything sink in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little bit too much of who was that character, what's his name, what's their backstory.
I do a lot of that with the Z Nation recap as well.
Many characters.
It's not like Walking Dead where most of the characters you know, and if somebody gets introduced, they're probably going to die within 4 episodes.
There are so many characters in Game of Thrones, though. So freaking many.
And they cut down from the books. That's the worst part.
I know.
Have you read the books, Ellie?
No.
They're good. 4 and 5 kind of go a little bit off the rails, sort of. But, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in them. It just gets super detailed. I actually think the show is better as far as, like, storytelling. The previous season 5, I thought got a little bit off track. But in general, I've thought that they condense things better where the book kind of expands and expands and expands. It's like, all right, dude, get to the point. Like, you don't have to just keep building out the world. We can go somewhere with this. But the TV show does a little better job of narrowing down. I guess some people like that more, and I don't hate it.
The book follows characters that I have absolutely no interest in too. which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and the great thing about the show is it cuts between, pretty quickly between characters, and you'll say, okay, well now we're here with this, now we're here with this guy, Whereas the book is like, here is, 100 pages from Cersei's point of view, and now we skip forward in time from the Onion Knight's point of view, and it just like you kind of have to infer things from what's being said, which is okay. But sometimes you'll like leave Arya on a cliffhanger or something, and then have to wait till the end of the book before he gets back to her POV. a little bit of a tease there.
But I've never seen anything of the Boltons. Like, I can't take it. I skip every single scene with the Boltons. So I don't know anything about them, and I don't want to. All I did was like hear a couple things, and they were just so incredibly rapey that I just am like, I'm not going to follow this storyline. And that's like another cool part about this show, though, is that you can like actually do that. And because like basically the Boltons are like, yeah, they're really bad and they need to get killed. And so like that's all I need to know as far as
you end up
plot
missing
goes.
a little bit of Sansa stuff if you do that, though.
Well, you can skip over the gratuitous parts of the Sansa stuff.
I promise. Yeah, like, oh my gosh. I do not want to find out what had happened to Sansa, whatever it was. It must have been nasty. So like
it's all
I
nasty.
I skipped everything with it. Like and it's like a huge relief. And that's like another cool part about the world is so big that I can actually like skip an entire storyline and like, because there are just so many other characters that I'm so invested in.
Have you, did you skip the Red Wedding, or did that like surprise you? Were you spoiled to it?
No, I'd heard about the Red Wedding, but when I saw it, I was like bawling the entire time. And it was the most gruesome death I'd ever seen on TV, ever. I mean, it's not like gruesome, but like emotionally horrifying.
Yeah, I could probably agree with that. It would be hard for me to consider another moment on TV that was more gut-wrenching than that. Like maybe some stuff in Breaking Bad, but even then.
That was one scene I got to in the books. That was before I was watching the show, and I was reading through book 3, and I got to the Red Wedding, and I just remember like, oh, they did that! Like, I can't believe that just happened! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! They just killed like half the people in the book! What? What's gonna happen now?
Yeah, they pulled like a Stephen King from The Stand, where he just got stuck with the story and was like, you know what happens? Things blow up, and about half these people die, and it forces them to finally do something. Except they were all doing stuff at that point, so it didn't feel as necessary as it did in The Stand.
I was also so pissed that it was by like such a little shit as Frey. I'm like, oh my god, you are the worst.
Yeah, well, it was that's how it works. You win
Mulder's
or you die. Oh, no spoilers, Tony. She's not through season 6 yet.
On like a writing level, the series like totally inspired me to just write from like to add so many more characters and add so many more perspectives that like, I mean, it depends on what kind of story that you're writing, but I was just amazed at how much it added once you gave the reader insights into was going on basically at every corner, and how much more invested you instantly got once you were seeing what was happening to, the whore and what was happening to the slave and the knight and the queen. Like, that was it just like raises the intensity level so much. And so as far as writing goes, like, I totally want to like use that in writing, since it's like successfully pulls you into that world a lot easier.
Well, it makes it a living, like, flesh and blood world, whereas that around all the characters and everything you read, there are people that are making the things happen for them, and this just kind of drags them into the story and makes them important. It's a lot of moving parts, and it can be done very poorly, but I think a lot of people are afraid to get outside of, like, the main framework of, like, 5 or 6 characters total.
I am not good at writing like that. I cannot, like, I have to pick I mean, I'm fine with like having everybody be sort of have depth, but generally when I'm writing a story, it's like the one perspective and just trying to explore that as deeply as I can. I read a lot of books where they hop around from scene, like, you know, from character to character to character, and in theory, I feel like, yeah, I could do that, but it just does not feel right to me. Sometimes as a writer, you kind of got to figure out what you're good at, and don't. For me, anyway, I try not to worry too much about the stuff that other.
You didn't write epic fantasy. You know,
No.
If you wrote epic fantasy, yeah, it's totally genre based.
I feel like I could still write a fantasy story, but it wouldn't be epic. It just would be very. I like personal stuff.
Well, you don't have to do the Chosen One style story. You don't have to do like this is going to affect nations. I think sometimes that gets lost in that there's a lot of interesting stories that could happen locally to people.
Well, yeah, I mean, the guy who can't pay the mortgage on his house, like, that's just as important to him as the guy who's like, I have to save the kingdom. I mean, if you can't feed your kids and you're going to watch your babies die, like, that's a big deal, even if it has no, like, national impact whatsoever.
The most recent book I'm working on, like, it has a fair amount of characters, but it's not, I don't think it's going to be more than, like, 12, and it's probably only from, like, 4 perspectives so far, so. That's, I'm not going to push it beyond that. I'm not that skilled of a writer. It's like things have to kind of come together and have to have a reason whenever you're introducing a new perspective, and I'm not going to push it beyond that for this type of a story.
Speaking of lots of characters, Ellie, did you see this article that's been going around about the body count in Guardians of the Galaxy and how many people died?
No.
They're claiming that
it.
it's the most. They're claiming that it is the most on-screen deaths of any movie of all time. With and I don't see, like, they didn't actually show their work in the article that I was linked to. They're saying that it's over 8,000 people die on screen in Guardians of the Galaxy.
It sounds like it's a lot, but I keep thinking of all these movies.
Didn't that entire planet explode?
I think they're saying. So here's where I think they're saying on screen means that you can.
I know, like what
about what? You cut out again. I'm sorry.
You were just going to explain it, that it has to be on screen, because there's like lots of movies where planets explode, and so then like millions of people are assumed dead.
Right, so I think the way they're getting it is they're like counting all of the ships in that Nova Corps net and assuming that each one of those has a pilot in it. And so when that explodes, like when they break through and blow that up, I think they're saying, okay, well, we know that there are many thousands of ships in that net, and we know that each one of them has a pilot. So that is an on-screen death. Whereas, say, when Alderaan blows up, we see a planet, but we don't know specific, like, we don't see individual people die. We can't verify how many that is.
Yeah, but you've got movies like Independence Day where it's literally showing, like, city blocks lined with thousands of people, like, running and getting wiped out. So I just don't know if they're really using the right metrics for that. Like, if they're going back into all the movies that show a lot of on-screen deaths. And then you've got, like, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where it's showing, like, people from every nation screaming, and then the sheep screaming, and, like, then it just implodes because of the Vogons.
Yeah, but again, we don't see, like, I think you have to be able to count the individuals. Like, if you can't, I don't know. And again, I'm defending this, but I think that they really need to do a lot more of, like, here's how we got this number. We didn't count these kinds of scenes. We didn't do this because of this. They just, like, slap that up there and they're like, by the way, Guardians of the Galaxy has 8,000 and nobody else has anywhere close to that. Peace. It's a terrible website. That
Saving Private Ryan had like 480, which is probably a lot more on-screen death than most are willing to show because it's so graphic in those deaths. Like, that has to be up there for, like, the most just individual shots of somebody, like, on-screen dying, I would think.
Who was the guy who was, like, going frame by frame through every movie and being like, guy died there, guy died there. Like, all right, we got to get out the calculator.
We do not need to do that. Out of all the information that we need in this information age, is probably not the one that we need.
See, I saw a really cool graphical breakdown of John Wick, like each scene where he kills people, and they were showing like the different weapons he used and how it all went down. It's like, that makes sense because you're picking one individual movie. You're not counting 8,000 people. Which, speaking of the 8,000 number, I always thought the president or like person who's in charge during that whole offensive, like the lady on the planet, I can't remember her title in Guardians of the Galaxy, was a little bit too happy at the end, considering how many people just died and how much of her city got destroyed. It's like, yeah, you won, but should you be that perky right now?
Well, it's kind of like despite the fact that you do,
Right.
despite the fact that you do see those ships blow up, like Marvel is really bad about sort of making you feel civilian deaths. I mean, this was my biggest complaint about Avengers Age of Ultron, is that like they never show a single person getting killed as a result of, the actions that are taking place on screen there. And presumably lots of people do die. It's very difficult to believe that the Hulk smashed through that city and all that debris fell off of that other city, and they didn't save everybody. There's no way they could have. And in fact, I think they like mention it in the Civil War, like we can't save everyone, but they sure do like make it look like we could save everyone. And that bugged me to death. I really hated that like the whole attitude of those movies is we always like winning is absolute and like nothing bad happened unless maybe it's convenient for a plot later on, but no ancillary characters died.
Yeah, they implied it a little bit more happening in the Avengers 1 just because of the way buildings were collapsing and all that. And they did so much better with it in Civil War. I don't know if that was a result of the way people reacted, but actually showing whenever when Scarlet Witch actually causes civilian casualties, that has added a lot more impact to it.
Right, and that needed to be there because that was the impetus for the whole film.
Right, and there was that, mother at the beginning who was angry and because
calling out
her
Tony
son
Stark
had died.
But the whole sort of one of the biggest conflicts in Age of Ultron.
It is like super. It would take the movie to a different level if they had shown those deaths, and it. Like they don't want to get dark and gritty, and by showing those deaths, it would have instantly been dark. And
I don't need everybody. I don't need like every single person who got smashed by the Hulkbuster. I understand that like that's not the point, but I wanted a couple of sort of individual, like here's a guy who's not going to get up, or here's a dude who the Hulk punched and now he's dead. Like if the Hulk turned back into this, this is a scene that I really want to see. I still haven't seen it. The Hulk turning back into Bruce Banner and Bruce Banner seeing somebody dead he's responsible for killing and had no control over that. Like that would make his character so much more full of pathos comparatively, and it's sort of I don't need to see the entire gory reality of war. I get that that's not the point of these movies, but sometimes they err a little bit too much on the side of, hey, it's all fun in the end, right? When they're trying to do a darker theme. I mean, the whole conflict, the driving conflict of Age of Ultron was that these two twins had been touched by this violence and sort of been forgotten. And in a sense, the movie ends up doing exactly what Tony Stark did for them. It's like, well, people got hurt, but we're not actually going to show them because they're not important. And so the off screen, they have to tell us about their horror, but we never actually see anybody go through something like that in the movie that sort of has that as its driving. This is not our Age of Ultron review, but that was my problem with that movie. Tony got mad with me at the time. He was not happy.
I didn't like Age of Ultron as much as any of the other Marvel movies. That might be at my bottom of that list. It's still a decent movie, but it just didn't measure up. But what I was going to bring up is like whenever you go too far in the opposite direction, then you get BVS. It's like where you get like the full dark and the full grit. Yeah. You hear about the casualties, but I guess they still didn't show much of them, especially because Man of Steel didn't show it. Is it the ratings boards that's stopping them? Like, are they worried that people will be triggered because of like 9/11 stuff? Like, it wouldn't make it fully rated R.
I don't know if you don't show you can show a death without it being super bloody. It can be a movie death. We don't have to have people ripped apart and their innards like gushing out on the streets. That doesn't it's not necessary to show a death in a movie, but I think generally they just want the sort of look at the big explosions kind of thing and knocking buildings over and just, you guys are going to assume that those buildings were evacuated, right? Right. Okay. We'll throw a line of dialogue in so you do assume it. Because that's how the world works.
All those people are a part of Fight Club. All of them. They knew it was coming.
Oh. It's just a really long con by, what's the Operation Chaos? Not Chaos. What do they have?
Project Mayhem.
Project Mayhem. Thank you.
I believe it's Project Mayhem. I might be confusing it for those car insurance commercials. No,
you're right. I'm pretty sure it's Project Mayhem. We're actually getting close to the end of our time here. Ellie, we'd like for you to, I mean, you're on here to talk about your Kickstarter. Can you take a minute to plug that one more time, so people know where to go and what it's all about? And then we're going to wrap up the show, I believe.
Yeah, I'm really excited about these books. Whenever my daughter first started learning how to read, I went out and got a bunch of easy readers. And they were all really like vanilla, kind of like nondescript, just like repetition, simple sentences, but they had basically no plot and characters. So I wrote these books in order to give kids who are just learning how to read like very simple books with more, complex story. So, it was really challenging, like to include an entire story in like 13 pages. But I loved it. It was fun to write. So one of the books is called Petra, and it's about this thief who learns who gets caught by a witch, and the witch teaches her how to create and not take. And then there's Wolf and Vampire, and it's kind of about what happens whenever you're whenever you do see your enemy in pain, and like what your reaction, what you should do. And then we have Rook is about the thief, and then Petra is this androgynous archer who's the best in the world, and they have to decide whether they're gonna use their talents for good or for evil, especially when these soldiers come and ask them to do this one job. So these are really short adventure stories in beautiful fantasy worlds. Like, you have to go check out the art for it. And there's backing, all kinds of backing levels. You can get 1 book or 2 books or 3 books, and it goes all the way up.
I went for that 32 level because that's where you get all 3 books.
Yeah. But please go check it out. If you have any questions, let me know. But it's good for, any fan of fantasy. If you have kids, really any reading level should probably enjoy it.
And it looks like you're almost halfway funded with 16 days to go as we're recording this. This will come out on Friday, so there'll be a few less days. So this sounds like something you guys are interested in. Go check out Ellie's Kickstarter. It's under Kickstarter. The title is Caster's Easy Readers by Caster Tales.
And there's definitely going to be some links in the description for this that'll send you directly there as well to Ellie's website. If you are new to the podcast and you haven't heard our other interviews, Ellie has a lot of awesome books out there. My favorite one is The Silver Sickle. You guys really should check that out. We'll have a link for that too. And I don't think that was fully a review. We kind of had you on to talk about it, but we didn't spoil anything. So if you're wondering about that book, go back and check it out.
It's also time for me to admit that I have your new one, the black girl on the cover. I can't remember what the name of it is. What?
Magic Academy.
Yes.
Magic Academy.
I have not read it yet. I'm ashamed to admit, but I have not got around to reading it yet. I'm still It
also took me a month and a half to ship it to you because I'm a little bit lazy with those sorts of things.
So that gives me a little bit of leeway, but still, I'm slogging my way through the Familiar Book 3, and when I get through there, I'll be checking it out. So yeah.
Thanks so much for having me on here. I always like the Human Echoes podcast.
For sure. We love having you on. Having you on. Do you have any, I know you're always going to cons. If people wanted to come see you, are you going to be at any in the next couple months?
Yeah, I'll be at World Fantasy Con in Columbus, Ohio at the end of the month. And then I think the next con is in Colorado. So I hope to see you there, Tony.
All right. Which con is that?
Anomaly Con.
Oh, I know that one. Yeah, like that one.
Yeah.
I've thought about going, but I haven't quite done it yet. So maybe I'll check it out this year.
Yeah, cool.
For the rest of you guys, we actually haven't decided what we're gonna watch next week. Me and Tony will talk about it when we get off. I think I have something for Tony. Tony, I might have something for you. Okay.
Is it going to be horror related? Remember, we got to keep it like at least like
it's like a
somewhat
riff
Halloween
on Edgar
related.
Allan Poe stuff. This is if you agree. It's got subtitles. Is this tickling your fancy at all?
I can handle subtitles. You know, I don't mind subtitles, but I'm wondering like just how much this actually is going to fit in with our October month. I know we're trying to get Shadow of the Vampire and have our good friend Doc Occupant on. He podcasts over at the Steely Eyed Wordsmith, so you got to check that out too. But we've got a lot of different stuff we could do. I really want to get some Hammer horror films in here. Al sounds like he's trying to get out of watching a horror movie, so we'll see what he has to say.
Okay. Well,
just announce it. I'll say yes.
Okay.
Most likely.
Then, in that case, next week's movie is Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key.
I mean, it's an intriguing title.
Wrong title.
It's an Italian movie, and it's full of boobs, Tony.
Okay, I am down.
I know you've suffered through Viewer's Choice Month. I felt like you deserve this. You deserve this.
Italian boobs, no less.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it next week. It's on YouTube, by the way. Probably not legally, technically, so if you have moral implications about that, I'm sure you can find it on Amazon too. I ended up watching it on YouTube, so I'm just going to admit that right now.
All right, and for those of you that haven't already, the best way to support the Human Echoes podcast is by becoming a member. If you go to humanechoes.com, click the Become a Member link. There are a bunch of options there. It starts at $2, goes up to $20 a month. At the $2 level, you get our favorite product, which is the bonus podcast. It is a lot of fun. It's the best thing that we put out, my favorite product personally, and it's the funnest conversations I get to have. Like, we get to do it 2 days from now, and that's like that's the best part of the week. Then we get to do Dirt Block. We get to do all sorts of other fun stuff. But if you want us to keep creating content, if you want us to keep growing, becoming a member is the best way. It's worth thousands of views on YouTube. It's worth a lot to us, and it means a lot to us whenever you guys actually become members. So go to humanechoes.com and check that out.
And we'll see you guys next week with our review of Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.